I'm not going to get a chance to speak with him if it's like this. Ludmilla frowned over the railing at the massive queue that had formed for Shihatsu Tokitsu's hot dog stand. She had meant to speak with him between the night's matches, but an army of His Majesty's maids suddenly swarmed the balk. Each of them had ordered 4 of the sumptuous hot dogs she had sampled before the fight between Lord Mayor and Lord Tian, plus a tall cup filled with various drinks. How can they eat so much? Are they that good? Lady Shiltir asked. I thought I would have the chance to speak with Master Tokitsu, my lady, Ludmilla replied. But I should have expected his stand to be this popular. As always, you're so excited when it comes to developing your domain. Not that I disapprove, but would it kill you to discuss the matter in a more quiet setting? Any discussion with him here will become a shouting match. You are right, my lady. Still, I don't have any other way to contact Master Tokitsu and he won't know who I am if I manage to. You worry too much, Lady Shiltir told her. If you were one of your friends, you would already be calmly carrying out some sort of strategy. They're merchants, I'm not. This type of thing has never been my strong suit. Never mind not being her strong suit, she couldn't quite trust herself to handle it. A part of her told her that she should send a proposal to Master Tokitsu in writing after getting Clara to help her put it together, but she wanted to at least introduce herself first. I'm not sure what you're expecting, Lady Shiltir said. It isn't as if he's going to be out to cheat you. It's not only that, my lady, Ludmilla replied. I have to make sure that what we agree on is fair for everyone involved. Then we must establish a vision, set present and future expectations, any licensing agreements if they apply. Lady Shiltir's crimson gaze glazed over as she listed off a mental checklist of everything that she had to consider. One of her vampire brides pulled out a notepad and started jotting things down for her mistress. I'm back. Ludmilla looked over her shoulder to find Lord Mayor standing just outside the booth. He had healed his injuries, but his hair was a mess and his usually pristine white coat was still spattered with blood. When no one else moved, Ludmilla went to a knee in front of him. Lord Mayor, she said as she tried to unmuss his hair, didn't you get a trooper's towel from me last winter? She pulled one of her own from her infinite haversack, using it to remove the blood and dirt from Lord Mayor's person. The dark elf squeezed his eyes shut and shivered as the magic washed over him, then he ran past her to sit beside the Sorcerer King. How did I do, Einsummer? Lord Mayor looked up at their sovereign apprehensively. Well, the opening was solid. After that, Sabos acted as expected, that tactic you resorted to. Lord Mayor smiled. Mr. Demiurge said that I'd win for sure if I did that. The Sorcerer King remained silent in the wake of Lord Mayor's response. Ludmilla couldn't help but frown at the dark elf's pleased tone. Do you mean to say that you feigned your distress, Lord Mayor? It really did hurt. Lord Mayor replied, then looked at the floor. I could have fought through it, but I'm not sure I would have been able to win. She glanced at the Sorcerer King, who remained perfectly still, then fixed Lord Mayor with a serious look. Using that sort of deception in a real conflict probably wouldn't garner any mercy from your enemies, Ludmilla said. As for resorting to those types of tactics in friendlier settings, I believe you are doing yourself and everyone around you a disservice by acting in that manner, my lord. A disservice? The Dark Elf asked. Why? Let me first say that it's all right to feel hurt and afraid, Ludmilla answered. But is not the purpose of a tournament to determine one's prowess? Furthermore, you are a leader whom many people look to for guidance and inspiration. People may excuse you for your behavior since you're still a child, but how would you like to be seen as a man? Dependable? Cowardly? Weak? I want to be cool like Lord Ines. Lord Ines is never afraid and can do anything. Ludmilla smiled at the Dark Elf's sudden burst of enthusiasm. That's a lofty goal, she said. It will take many steps to get there, but I think that many would like to see the Lord Mayor who strives to be as brave and competent as His Majesty. Well, I can't be as cool as Lord Ines. Lord Mayor fidgeted slightly. Maybe a little bit less. The Sorcerer King shifted slightly on his throne. Ludmilla's smile faded and she looked away. Her words could have very well been taken as those of a sycophant. Leaving matters of the far future aside, the Sorcerer King finally spoke. Lady Zaradnik is right in the idea that this tournament was meant to showcase the results of everyone's growth. The match just now provided little opportunity for neither you nor Sabos to do so. Then, should we fight again? Perhaps sometime later, the Sorcerer King said. The next match will be starting soon. I should apologize to Sabos. No apologies are necessary, Mere Summer, Lord Tian said as he appeared at His Majesty's shoulder. Lord Ines understands the complexities of the matter, which is all that matters. Ludmilla's eyes went between Lord Tian and Lord Mare. The dark elf didn't react in the slightest at Lord Tian's sudden appearance, so it seemed that Lord Mare had indeed exaggerated his distress during their match. The last of Master Tokitsu's customers made off with her spoils just in time for Lady Aura to appear once again to announce the next match. It didn't look like she had been harmed by whatever it was that Lord Mare sent her way. Our last match was a bit short, but now we have something really meaty for everyone. A match between warriors of the highest caliber. In the black corner, we have the Guardian Overseer of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, Albedo. Do your best, Albedo-chan. Amidst the welcome of the crowd, the most prominent voice was that of Lady Negredo, who waved a black handkerchief in the air. A figure in pitch-black armor walked onto the field, wielding an oversized bardiche. I didn't know that Lady Albedo was a polearm user, Ludmilla said. Didn't Leanne and Florine tell you about that day? Lady Shaltir asked. They did, Ludmilla answered, but they said that she used a big axe. Also, she's fully covered in plate armor. Why do I have to wear such a short skirt? I'd be far more intimidating in something like that. You have other impressions to make, Lady Shaltir told her. Albedo isn't the charismatic sort. Encasing her in metal and sending her out to smash things is good enough for the gorilla that she is. Despite her liege's words, Ludmilla remained envious of the Prime Minister's equipment. A powerful and imposing appearance could inspire just as much confidence in one's allies, and it was nowhere near as embarrassing. In the blue corner, standing at 2.5 meters and weighing in at 1 ton, we have the Guardian of the 5th floor, the ruler of frozen rivers, Cocytus. The loudest cheers rose from a particularly chilly-looking section of the arena seating where a variety of heteromorphs waved frost-colored flags. Lord Cocytus took to the field, an icy mist swirling in the wake of his steps. Aura should have announced Albedo's weight, as well. Lady Shaltir smiled slightly behind her fan. Would there be any point in that, my lady? Ludmilla asked. There's obviously a vast difference between them. Lady Albedo looked to be close to Ludmilla's height and, as a warrior, her weight was probably close to hers. Since this was the case and she also used a polearm, Ludmilla was keenly interested in how she would fight. More than you know, Lady Shaltir said lightly. Albedo is about 5 times more massive than Cocytus. Ludmilla gave her liege an incredulous look, then peered at the figure in black armor again. Since the Prime Minister was armored from head to toe, she couldn't discern her true form. Does that apply to her current appearance, my lady? It would be funny if it did. Her shoes would leave holes all over Eranthal. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she would probably rather lose than transform in front of Lord Ines. For all of her demonic nature, she still has a woman's worries. In that case, her observations of Lady Albedo's side of the match could still be approximated with her own form. Hopefully, she would be able to learn something useful. The two duelists turned to offer the Sorcerer King a deep bow before turning back to face one another. Lady Aura looked at each before raising her hand. Begin. Lord Cocytus' jewelry glittered in the lighting as he drew a curved, two-handed blade of unknown origin. He took it in his upper claws and raised the weapon in a classic high guard. Looks like he's leaving his other arms free. It was a problematic scenario for any combatant with only 2 arms. Even if Lady Albedo had a freedom effect, Lord Cocytus could grapple her bardiche with his second set of claws, leaving her wide open to strikes from his sword. Opposite Lord Cocytus, Lady Albedo took up a one-handed long-tail stance. Considering the nature of her weapon, it felt like a highly awkward starting position. It was clearly defensive, however, suggesting that Lady Albedo was waiting for her opponent to commit to an attack before making her own. That's probably one of the only good answers, I suppose. The crowd hushed as the tension in the air rose. Neither combatant seemed willing to give up their advantage by making the first move. Then, a sheet of ice swept out from Lord Cocytus' feet to cover the field. Black wings sprouted from Lady Albedo's waist as she launched herself into the air. Lord Cocytus moved at the same time, dashing forward while tracking the black-armored warrior with a free hand. Piercing icicle. A shard of crystal ice over a meter long shot out to head off Lady Albedo's trajectory. The Prime Minister slowed to allow the projectile to pass. Cutting wind. Lord Cocytus slashed his sword upwards at an oblique angle. Lady Albedo twisted in place as if to avoid something. "What happened there?" Ludmilla said. "Cocytus used a ranged attack," the Sorcerer King told her. "A blade of wind, to be precise. I recall seeing similar martial arts being used by human warriors." "I've heard of such martial arts, Your Majesty," Ludmilla said, "but I'm not very familiar with them." Out on the field, Lord Cocytus and Lady Albedo seemed to be sizing one another up in their new positions. Ludmilla used some martial arts to boost her perception, praying that it would be enough to keep track of the fight. "We are going to be here until next month at this rate," Lady Sholtier yawned. "Duels between skilled warriors do feel that way," the Sorcerer King said. "More often than not, it seems like a single decisive blow wins the match." "In my experience, Your Majesty," Ludmilla said, "that's simply an illusion, for lack of a better word." "An illusion. Thanks to the ear clip that I was granted, I can monitor the damage sustained by combatants over the course of a bout. The decisive blow only ever happens when enough damage has been received for it to happen." "You mean to say that it will only happen if an attack does enough damage to finish off or incapacitate the target?" Ludmilla nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. We tested it thoroughly some time ago. I had the Elder Liches summon assorted animals as experimental targets. Fatal strikes, such as piercing the heart or decapitation, could only happen if the target's health got low enough for the damage from those types of attacks to finish them off." "That would probably seem silly to most," the Sorcerer King said. "Why am I so stupid?" Too late, she realized that the Sorcerer King would obviously know about it and that it wouldn't change anything about his or Lady Sholtier's comment. Lord Cocytus and Lady Albedo could very well be powerful enough to fight non-stop for the rest of the month. She had measured out her own rope already, so to speak, so she had little choice but to proceed and hang herself. "Yes, Your Majesty," she said as they continued to watch the standoff. "Even a silver-rank adventurer may be instantly felled by an unlucky blow to the head, so the vast majority don't realize that this threshold exists. Our findings have been invaluable for deciphering House Saradnik's combat school and developing martial arts." It was almost as if her ancestors already knew about the phenomena, but it was more likely that generations of development had led them to tackle it unknowingly. One did not have to know the elemental workings of fire to learn how to cook, after all. A pillar of ice exploded from the sand as Lord Cocytus tried to knock Last Albedo out of the sky. As with his other attacks, however, it was easily avoided. Lord Cocytus seemed unperturbed by his failures, however, so they may have been the equivalent of probing attacks that cost little or nothing. "Does Lady Albedo have no way to strike from range?" Ludmilla asked. "She's built as a tank," the Sorcerer King said, "so her range defense is highly limited." "In that case, is she trying to exhaust Lord Cocytus?" "That's unlikely. At the same time, she knows that Cocytus is unlikely to harm her at that range." Maybe she's trying to see if Mr. Cocytus has something new," Lord Mayor said. "I don't see how that's possible, though." "Not possible?" Maybe they had reached a level of mastery that improvement was something that took generations or centuries to achieve. Given the nature of martial arts, however, she couldn't see how that could be the case unless they had conceptually cornered themselves somehow. Another icicle flew out at Lady Albedo, followed by the invisible blade of wind. This time, however, the pillar of ice came up under Lady Albedo as she twisted to avoid the second attack. Her heels struck the ice and she launched herself higher into the air. "Gah, they're too far for life essence," Lady Sholtier said. "Did she take any damage from that?" "She should have," Lord Mayor said. "The bludgeoning damage wouldn't have done anything, but the ice damage should have gotten through." Ludmilla's eyes followed Lady Albedo as she circled over Lord Cocytus like a bird of prey. The enchantment on her ear clip had the same limitations and the Prime Minister showed no outward signs of injury. "She's probably mad at getting outplayed," Lady Sholtier said. "I bet she'll go on the offensive now." "Can a warrior of her caliber be goaded like that?" As if in answer to her unspoken question, Lady Albedo folded her wings and dove straight at Lord Cocytus. The Grand Marshal went into a hanging guard, preparing to skewer the plummeting Prime Minister. Lady Albedo paid the clear threat no mind, raising her bardiche in both hands for a powerful overhead attack. Unholy Strike. The black blade of Lady Albedo's weapon took on a profane hue as it smashed into Lord Cocytus' shoulder. At the same time, the Grand Marshal's sword pierced the Prime Minister's placard. An explosion rocked the arena, sending jagged bits of frozen debris high into the air. Lord Cocytus issued a loud grunt, flinging his skewered opponent halfway across the field. Lady Albedo skidded across the ice for a split second before she switched to using her wings to slow down. She couldn't stop completely, and her boots slammed into the arena wall. She launched herself away before an icicle shattered against the stone. Back on the other side of the arena, Lord Cocytus stepped out of the shallow crater left behind by Lady Albedo's impact. The huge crystal on his right shoulder was broken and the surrounding carapace was cracked, but his movements remained steady. "How bad is that injury?" Ludmilla asked. "I'm not at all familiar with insectoid physiology." "Who knows?" Lady Sheltier shrugged. Ludmilla frowned slightly, then looked over at Lord Mayor. The dark elf shook his head. Perhaps gauging the condition of other races was much more difficult than it seemed. Lord Cocytus flicked the blood off of his blade. A blast of frigid breath flash froze the crimson stain. "Is that it?" The dark figure hovering across from him issued no response. Lady Albedo's armor had completely repaired itself and she similarly showed no sign of faltering. Ludmilla glanced to either side of her, wondering if the air of malevolent disdain she felt emanating from the Prime Minister was merely her imagination. "Do unholy skills even work on Mr. Cocytus?" Lord Mayor asked. "Only a bit," the Sorcerer King answered. "His karma score isn't very high, after all. Still, it doesn't hurt to use them." "What is a karma score, Your Majesty?" Ludmilla asked. Practically speaking, it's how certain abilities, skills, and spells determine their effectiveness on a target. Albedo has Dark Knight classes, which are the counterpart of Paladin classes. The unholy strike she used just now is more effective the more positive the karma score of its target is. In other words, it is an anti-good skill. She just activated her unholy aura, which bolsters a target against good and weakens any good targets that strike those bolstered by it. Again, it's not very effective against Cocytus, but every bit counts in a fight like this. Ludmilla was familiar with Dark Knights, as the Frost Giants had plenty of them, but it was the first she had heard of unholy aura. Quite frankly, who got what still confused her. She was undead, so she had an affinity for negative energy-related skills, abilities, and martial arts, but at what point did they become unholy? It wasn't as if she felt especially evil for using negative energy. In places like Riestais and the Empire, terms like unholy, evil, divine, and so on were tossed around so liberally that she felt that they had lost their precise meaning. Lady Albedo went on the offensive again, this time skimming low over the ground at a speed Ludmilla found difficult to follow even with her martial art-enhanced senses. She flashed into existence again as her weapon battered the tip of Lord Cocytus' blade aside. Defiling Edge. Kirkikara Blade. Undaunted by Lady Albedo's lightning offensive, Lord Cocytus brought his sword back in a counterattack that blasted his opponent away. Her breastplate shattered into countless pieces that spun over the ice. Any regular person who was subjected to such catastrophic force would have had their torso pulverized, but it looked like Lady Albedo had survived the blow unscathed. The Sorcerer King stroked his chin. "When it comes to karma-dependent attacks," Lord Mayor said, "Mr. Cocytus has the advantage, doesn't he?" "That may be so," the Sorcerer King replied, "but he won't be able to use that one again. I'm pretty sure Albedo baited out that attack." "She did?" She had to take a critical hit for it, but now Cocytus' most powerful combo has been taken out of the fight. That armor of hers sure allows her to do some reckless things. Ludmilla examined Lady Albedo again. Very little about that exchange made sense to her. The Prime Minister's charge felt like it had been perfectly executed, and then Lord Cocytus answered with an insane counter. Normally, swords couldn't even scratch a sturdy breastplate, never mind shatter them. Actually, it looks like every part of her plate body armor broke apart. How does that even happen? Beneath the Prime Minister's plate armor was a full suit of chain. Ludmilla didn't want to believe it, but it was as if her equipment was designed to break. Lady Albedo didn't seem at all distraught about shedding a layer of her defenses, lending to that impression. Lord Cocytus launched another ranged combo at Lady Albedo, who had once again taken wing. The loss of Lady Albedo's armor seemingly didn't increase her caution, as she started another diving attack. She swerved around a pillar of ice that appeared in front of her, using her momentum to bring her polearm to bear in a wide arc against Lord Cocytus. To Ludmilla's surprise, the Grand Marshal didn't have his weapon at the ready. Instead, the sword was sheathed in the scabbard gripped in his left claw. Just as Lady Albedo came around the pillar, Lord Cocytus exploded forward, drawing his blade in a flash. Vajraja strike. The attack caught Lady Albedo on the left side of her waist and crossed to her opposite shoulder. Once again, rather than sliding over the chainmail armor as a regular blade would, Lord Cocytus' sword tore through the links. Inexplicably, once again, Lady Albedo's armor exploded, sending countless chain links into the air. "And that's two," the Sorcerer King nodded. "I don't understand," Ludmilla said. "What in the world is going on? Does combat at their level simply cause armor to fly apart?" No. Not so easily, anyway. What you're seeing is a combination of two things. The two attacks that Cocytus used are extraordinarily effective against someone with an extremely low karma score. Kirkagara Blade would be lethal for anyone like Albedo without the appropriate countermeasures, and Vajraja Strike is also quite potent. Albedo's armor is designed to break at a certain threshold, absorbing damage meant for its wearer. His Majesty had explained things as if what was going on was normal and expected, but it still confused her. Exploding armor didn't make any sense no matter which way she looked at it. Now that Lady Albedo's chainmail was gone, she was left in a black arming doublet that hugged her figure. "It hadn't crossed my mind until now," Lady Shaltia said, "but the way you get to strip her is pretty erotic, isn't it? The fact that her helmet, boots, and gauntlets stay on the entire time is pretty high level." Ludmilla shook her head. Her liege's mind just worked differently from everyone else's. Hoarfrost. A thick frost grew over the frozen arena. Lady Albedo, who had flown to relative safety again, lost altitude as her black feathers became caked with ice. "Looks like Cocytus is trying to finish things up," the Sorcerer King said. "He used his two anti-low karma attacks," Lord Mayor said, "so now he's switching to cold damage to bypass her physical defenses." "It seems that way," Lady Shaltia said. "This looks like a win for Cocytus, not that anyone expected Albedo to win." Lord Cocytus charged just before Lady Albedo alighted on the ice. Blade of Rime. Frost formed along the length of the Grand Marshal's weapon. The sword carved a shining arc through the air, but Lady Albedo blocked the strike with the haft of her weapon. She took a step forward, working her bardiche around the blade to score a clean hit across her opponent's head. Lord Cocytus disengaged and rebalanced his stance before going on the offensive again. This time, he reached out with his second pair of claws to grapple with Lady Albedo for her weapon. Frostburn Smite. Lord Cocytus' uncontested blow landed solidly on Lady Albedo's shoulder. A black gauntlet came up to grip the blade and a flanged mace smashed into Lord Cocytus' face. As the weapon came in to bludgeon Lord Cocytus again, his second set of arms brought Lady Albedo's bardiche up to defend against the attack, only to have it blocked by the blade held fast in Lady Albedo's hand. A third strike from the mace landed before Lord Cocytus kicked his opponent away. "Did Albedo always have a sidearm?" Lady Shaltia asked. "It doesn't look like she's taking much damage from Cocytus' attacks, either," Lord Mayor added. Down on the field, it looked like Lord Cocytus also realized that something was wrong. He eyed Lady Albedo warily, his blade at the ready. What is this? I wonder," a woman's smug voice issued from the black helmet. Lady Albedo advanced again, accepting another hit from Lord Cocytus' sword in exchange for a crushing blow with her mace. This time, the attack broke one of the arms stubbornly trying to pull the sword free from Lady Albedo's grip. "This is weird," Lord Mayor said. "She should be taking a lot of damage from Mr. Cocytus' sword and being in his frost aura." "The duelists have had plenty of time to prepare for their matches," Ludmilla said, "so it stands to reason that Lady Albedo prepared countermeasures for her duel with Lord Cocytus." Lord Mayor and Lady Shaltia exchanged a look. "That's impossible," Lady Shaltia laughed lightly. "Who would do that?" "That's the match." Lady Aura's voice rang out over the arena. Winner, Albedo. A great clamor rose in the wake of the announcement. Everywhere, Ludmilla could see that it was as much due to the spectators' confusion as it was their recognition of the victor. The Sorcerer King rose from his throne, stepping up to the edge of the booth. Albedo. Cocytus. The two duelists approached the base of the booth and genuflected before the Sorcerer King. You have both fought well. Many of our spectators are confused, as are you, Cocytus. Ha, Lord Cocytus replied. I do not understand why my attacks were ineffective at the end of the match. Albedo, the Sorcerer King said, would you care to explain? If it pleases you, Lord Ines, Lady Albedo replied. The answer is simple, I merely equipped some items to make myself immune to cold damage. I also improved my resistance against slashing and piercing damage. Cheater. Lady Shaltir shouted down at the Prime Minister, are you so desperate to win that you're willing to stoop to such measures? Cheater? Lady Albedo's reply dripped with disdain, how, pray tell, did I cheat? I received permission to use these items from Lord Ines himself. All eyes went to the Sorcerer King, who nodded regally in response. Indeed, he said, I approved of their use. This tournament is being held to show how everyone has improved, and preparing one's equipment is fundamental to improvement. Cocytus, you, especially, should be aware of this. I was willing to extend my generosity to the lizardmen, do you not think I would do the same for you? For any of Nazarik's denizens? The world constantly changes and we never know when powerful threats may appear. Those threats will not know about the limitations that you've placed on yourselves, nor will they care. The Sorcerer King's gaze swept across the arena. As everyone has witnessed, even the simplest adaptations may overturn all expectations. I hope this will serve as a potent lesson to everyone. The tapping of metal on metal sounded in the air outside of Lord Mayor's treehouse on the 6th floor of Nazarik. After securing her tent to its pegs, Ludmilla took a step back to examine her work. See? It came in useful. It was perfectly reasonable to bring camping equipment with her. One never knew when one would need it. Packing a small armory's worth of cosmetics and personal items as her friends did was nowhere near as practical. You sure you're all right out here? Yes, my lady, Ludmilla answered. Forgive my saying so, but those maids are just too much trouble. I prefer staying outdoors whenever possible anyway. I know, right? Lady Aura said, I sleep on the branches up there. Those three can't come and bug me when I'm hiding out there. They seem overly protective of Lord Mayor. Lady Aura's expression soured. Overprotective? More like possessive. I don't think it's safe to leave them alone with him for much longer. Have they tried something? Not yet. But in 4 or 5 decades, it's just a feeling, you know? Whenever I see them together, it's less like they're serving him and more like they're trying to monopolize him. Like they're trying to be the only eligible women he's around. Ludmilla frowned at the implication. It wasn't unheard of for members of a household to become involved with their masters or mistresses. Sometimes, it was even used as a matchmaking technique, giving the candidates time to get to know one another in an everyday setting. Other times, it was the product of more nefarious or selfish motives. In the case of the 3 elf maids, they should have realized that Lord Mayor was far out of their reach. Since my lady seems to disapprove of their behavior, Ludmilla said, I take it that this is frowned upon in Dark Elf culture? Dark Elf culture, huh? Lady Aura crossed her arms with a frown. If you haven't noticed, Mayor and I are the only Dark Elves around here. I just don't like what's happening. In that case, why not release them from your service? Because Lord Ines said that we can't get rid of them. She wondered why that was. Lady Aura and Lord Mayor's mother wasn't around anymore and she hadn't heard anything at all about their father, so was it because the Sorcerer King wanted some adult elves around? Having parental figures around was certainly important, but, as far as Ludmilla could tell, the trio of maids weren't in any way fulfilling the role. Is that why we treat Lord Mayor and Lady Aura the way we do? Though their station was far above theirs, Ludmilla and her friends tended to act like surrogate family members for the 2 Dark Elf children. This was well before Ludmilla had learned a bit about their family life, so maybe they could all sense that the twins were missing something in that regard. For Lord Mayor and Lady Aura's part, they didn't react negatively to the treatment, or perhaps they never stuck around long enough for it to become unwelcome. Does His Majesty perhaps wish for you to have some adult role models? Ludmilla asked. Lord Ines is the only role model we need," Lady Aura asserted, then paused. "Well, I guess it's true that there's a problem when it comes to the women around here, but those three definitely aren't the answer. So they haven't passed on any of their customs or values? Nah, all they do is snivel when we get mad at them and try to pamper us when we don't. Makes you wonder what their lives were like before, or maybe it's because they were broken in as slaves?" Lady Aura fell silent for a moment, then shrugged. She clearly cared little for her unwanted servants. A part of Ludmilla disapproved of her attitude. No matter how problematic a house's members were, the head of a household had a duty to keep them in line. It was unreasonable to expect children to have a good handle on household affairs, but, at the same time, they were ultimately responsible for them. "So," Lady Aura said, "what are you going to do tonight?" "I thought I'd take the opportunity to make a record of what I've seen so far, my lady," Ludmilla replied. "So much about this place is entirely foreign to the world that I've known. I can only hope that my understanding is sufficient to describe everything." "Didn't Lord Ines say that you could come back to play whenever? You can just visit again if there's something you can't remember." "It isn't just the memory of this place," Ludmilla said. "The thoughts that come along with it are just as important. Nazarick has inspired many ideas that I'd like to explore in Warden's Vale." "Like what?" Ludmilla pulled the front of her tent open and started unloading furniture from her infinite haversack. "The scale of my subterranean farms, for one," Ludmilla said. "It never even crossed my mind that it was possible to raise entire forests underground as you have here. The fact that it is literally allows us to create new frontiers." "You are going to try to recreate the 6th floor in Warden's Vale?" "I doubt that we could achieve anything remotely like the 6th floor at the moment. I'd consider something on the scale of a small copse a success. Speaking of which, what's holding up the ceiling here?" "The walls." She frowned up at the starry night sky. Was it possible to have such a vast ceiling with only walls holding it up? The closest structure to the 6th floor that she could think of was the dwarven capital of Fioberkana, and even that place had a huge central pillar. It doesn't have to be the same. A few supporting pillars here and there are perfectly fine. What mattered was that they could create surface ecologies underground. A hybrid ecology that transitioned into a subterranean one would be even better, as it would create some much-needed room for a few of the Sorceress Kingdom's member races. "What other types of environments does Nazarick have, my lady?" Ludmilla asked. "Plenty," Lady Aura answered. "Above the 6th floor is a land of eternal winter that Cocytus rules. Above that is the subterranean lake where Gargantua is stationed. Below us is something like an active volcano, and there's a wasteland after that. That's far beyond my reach." She could probably sustain a small frozen area with enough elemental ice, but he had no idea how to create a volcanic environment. Would obtaining elemental fire do the trick, or would that simply result in a chamber of scorched stone? Am I correct in assuming that the variety of environments in Nazarick is meant to provide its inhabitants with living space? How will this be accomplished in the Sorceress Kingdom for the more extreme cases? Maybe it wasn't possible on such a large scale. Then again, they were somewhat close to it on a national level, they just didn't have it all conveniently near the capital. After she finished setting up the furniture for her tent, she invited Lady Aura inside for tea. The dark elf looked around the interior curiously. "This is pretty nice," she said. "Isn't it?" Ludmilla smiled. "I prefer being outdoors to being indoors, and a tent like this is a good compromise between being outside and having some privacy. It keeps the elements out of your stuff, as well. I wonder if we have something like this in the treasury." Why would her first option to get a tent be the royal treasury? "Out of curiosity, my lady, do you know much about the treasury?" "Not really," Lady Aura replied as she tested Ludmilla's cot. "If you want to know more about the treasury, asking Pandora's actor would be your best bet, though I wouldn't recommend that." "Who is Pandora's actor?" "The area guardian of the treasury." "The treasury is an area?" "Yep. Is the royal treasury so large that it requires its own territory?" Having a large budget surplus for centuries might very well justify the need for one, but it still couldn't be that large. Maybe it was something similar in scale to Lord Holniot's cave. That aside, she couldn't exactly voice her concerns to the very person she was harboring suspicions about. "Perhaps I'll have the opportunity to meet him later," Ludmilla said. "How about we discuss the operations of your territory? I'm particularly interested in what it takes to maintain such a wondrous place. To Ludmilla's surprise, Lady Aura didn't immediately respond with enthusiasm on the subject. This was strange, considering that almost every noble was more than happy to talk about their land. It was not only their life's work, but also a precious heritage passed down to them by their forebears. I'm not sure what there is to say about it, Lady Aura said. You said you wanted ideas to take home with you, right? Not much of what we do here is relatable to what you people do out in the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Is it due to the magical technology involved in running this place? I guess you could say that. The food and livestock that we produce here go towards feeding the people in Nazarick who need to eat. Everything else goes towards funding infrastructure. We don't have any of the other stuff that you guys have going on out there. Not even compensation for labor and various services? Ludmilla asked. How do people make a living? Everyone gets everything that they need, Lady Aura told her. It's all free of charge. Had she misunderstood the Sorcerer King's policies again? Or was she on her way to realizing them? One of the, rather vague, domestic policies of the Sorcerer's Kingdom could be paraphrased as from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. With so many races and varying aptitudes across the citizenry, it was best to allow people to do what they were good at. The rural population mostly embraced the sentiment behind the idea, but it resulted in quite a bit of controversy in urban circles. Of course, any criticism of the policy was voiced strictly in private. Ludmilla's attempts to practically enact the policy resulted in her chartering companies for every industry active on her lands. Each company was mostly directed by its employees and had a profit-sharing program that secured a comfortable standard of living for everyone. Ludmilla's input was limited to what she believed to be the responsibilities of a lord, which revolved around the development and well-being of her territories as a whole. So far, things were working out well, but the entire system she was overseeing was still new. It wasn't anywhere on the level of Nazarick where everything that happened was treated as a given. As she was unpacking the cake she had brought as a gift from Warden's Vale, a knock sounded against one of the tent posts holding up the entrance. Ludmilla looked up to find Lord Mayor standing outside, timidly clutching his black staff. Welcome, Lord Mayor. Hello, I was just checking to see if it was safe. Safe, my lord? Don't mind him, Lady Aura told her. He's like that even at home. I thought you'd be staying with Lord Irons for longer. Several members of the royal court had converged on the Sorcerer King after the match, so Ludmilla had quietly withdrawn in the face of such lofty company. It wasn't a gathering that she had any right to attend. Albedo and Shiltir started fighting, Lord Mayor said, so I ran away. Ah, what a pain, Lady Aura said. That's why I didn't stick around. That Albedo really stirred the pot with that stunt of hers. Please come in, my lord, Ludmilla said. We were just about to have a late-night treat. Lord Mayor removed his boots before coming in to sit down on the cot beside his sister. When my lord says that stunt, Ludmilla said, does it refer to the fact that she changed her equipment? Why yes. In that case, I don't understand the controversy. Why is changing one's equipment a stunt? What makes it so strange and unconventional? Those with the means should change their equipment to best deal with the situations that they find themselves in, shouldn't they? The two dark elves exchanged a look. Because. Lord Mayor's voice trailed off and he squirmed in his seat a bit. Our equipment was left behind by our parents, you know? Lady Aura said. How could Albedo even think of replacing it? I understand that such things would mean a great deal to someone, Ludmilla said, but would your parents be happy if the items that they left behind for you caused you trouble? And though you say replacing, it's only temporary, it isn't as if you're throwing everything away. The twins exchanged a silent look, but didn't offer any reply. Ludmilla came over, bearing 2 slices of cake on polished wooden plates. Lord Mayor raised his plate to eye level. This looks familiar. The cake has layers of panforty, marzipan, and ricotta, Ludmilla said. It's something one usually only finds in the Riverlands, but our rangers brought in plenty of ingredients this year. The cooks in Warden's Vale have been experimenting with recipes for the Autumn Harvest Festival. So they learned it from the cooks in Calling County? Lord Mayor asked. It's a recipe from the theocracy, Ludmilla answered. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this to you before, but, culturally speaking, The southern parts of the Duchy of Eranthal share more in common with the Slain theocracy than it does with Riestais. Does that include Warden's Vale? Yes. I don't mean to suggest that we're the same, but things like food and practical customs tend to spread readily. As far as Warden's Vale is concerned, we also had shared security concerns on the Abelian frontier. The two dark elves' ears wiggled slightly as they munched on their cake. They seemed more interested in their food than what she had to share. How's the cake? Ludmilla asked. My cooks have been looking for feedback. It's yummy, Lord Mayor said around a mouthful. Lady Aura swallowed. It's good, she said. We've had cake from Eranthal before, but this is different somehow. Either our cooks have gained enough levels to make a difference, Ludmilla said, or what they say about ingredients harvested in the wild also applies to food. You should bring that up with the head chef, Lord Mayor said. I think he'd at least want to take a look around your area. I will keep that in mind, my lord, Ludmilla said as she refilled their tea. Is Master Tokitsu interested in anything in particular? What sort of accommodations are appropriate for someone of his station? He just likes fresh ingredients, I guess? The higher the tier, the better, but he'll even use the low-level cattle grazing outside of Nazarick. As for accommodations, I think he'd just go back to Nazarick if he needs to rest. Will he need any help procuring ingredients? I wonder. He's pretty strong, so the local wildlife shouldn't be a problem, but I can't recall if he has any job classes that help with foraging. If any materials need specialized collection skills, he'll need help with those. Ludmilla tried to recall whether anything like that existed in her territory. It wasn't as if anyone who wasn't a ranger went out into the wild to forage. She could probably have some of the trainees act as guides. She served her guests another slice of cake. As she went to refill their tea, a trio of familiar figures appeared from the direction of the treehouse. Lord Mayor and Lady Aura sighed and pointedly tried to ignore their approach. The three elf maids started raising a ruckus as soon as they spotted them. Lord Mayor, Lady Aura, please come away from there. It's dangerous. The human gave them food? Quick, check it for poison. Perhaps the true reason behind the theocracy's war with the elves was that they were insufferably annoying. The cleric came straight into the tent and tried to take Lord Mayor's plate away. The ranger tried to do the same with Lady Aura, but Lady Aura deftly kept her plate out of reach. What are you doing? Lord Mayor cried. This is my cake. My lord shouldn't accept food from strange women. Ludmilla isn't a strange woman, Lord Mayor protested. We've known each other for a long time now. That's right, Ludmilla said. We even have a daughter. Everyone in the tent froze and stared at Ludmilla. The druid fainted. That was sort of funny, Ludmilla said. Lady Aura burst out into laughter. The cleric released Lord Mayor's plate to shake him by the shoulders. Is that true? She screeched. Tell me it isn't true, my lord. Well, Lord Mayor pointedly avoided the cleric's wild-eyed gaze. It is from a certain point of view. The cleric sank to her knees and broke down. To be fair, it was how members of a household might behave if they found out that its young master had fathered illicit offspring. What in the world is going on here? A terrified squeal rose from the two conscious maids. They fled to the corner of the tent, clutching at Lady Aura. Lady Shiltia, Ludmilla lowered her head in greeting. We were having tea, which somehow became this. Lady Shiltia's crimson gaze went from Lord Mayor to the collapsed druid, then to Lady Aura and the two other maids in the corner. Since we're having tea, she pointed to the elf sprawled on the ground. Can I have that one? Of course not. Lady Aura told her. Lord Ines said that we weren't allowed to kill them. I wouldn't necessarily kill her, Lady Shiltia said. We could just have a little bit of fun. Lady Aura's lip curled at the vampire's salacious smile. What are you doing here, anyway? I came by to see if you knew where Ludmilla had gone, Lady Shiltia replied. Those three weren't even aware that you had returned, so they went looking for you. You. Lady Aura scowled. You are the one that ruined our dessert. They're your attendants. Why should their behavior be a problem of mine? Anyway, it's time to retire to my chambers. Let's go, Ludmilla. A chill went up Ludmilla's spine. Lady Aura untangled herself from her two maids. You did something weird to her, didn't you? Whatever do you mean? Lady Shiltia smiled innocently. Holnyat appeared with her earlier today. That wasn't me. She went to Holnyat on her own. Lady Aura sent Ludmilla a questioning look. "It's true, my lady," Ludmilla said in a slightly puzzled tone. "Is there something wrong with that?" "No, if that's what you're into. Still, Shiltir did something, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be pitching a tent here." "That's..." Ludmilla cast her gaze downward. She didn't like what had happened, but, at the same time, she couldn't bring any shame upon her liege over a personal matter. "Out," Lady Aura said. "But..." "Out," Lady Aura shouted, "if she's like this, I can't even imagine what you did to her. I don't want to know. Out." Lady Shiltir sniffled before turning to leave. "Perhaps she could stay for tea," Ludmilla said. Lady Shiltir turned back around with a smile. "Nope." Lady Aura crossed her arms. "You can't coddle her. If that dummy does dumb things, she needs to understand the depths of her dumminess." "Humph." Lady Shiltir turned again and flounced away. Lady Aura popped the last bit of cake into her mouth and went to put on her boots. "Let's go," she said. But I haven't finished my cake yet," Lord Mayor cried. "You may take the plate with you, my lord," Ludmilla said. "What are we doing, my lady?" "There was a bunch of stuff we wanted to test out," Lady Aura replied. "Since Mayor's with us now, we should get it done." With plate in hand, Lord Mayor stepped over his fallen maid. The ranger and the cleric went to help him put on his boots. "Let's see." Lady Aura scanned their surroundings. "This way." They went straight into the forest, leaving the two elf maids to tend to their fallen third. After walking a few hundred meters, they stopped in front of a brightly colored plant crawling up the side of a tree. It resembled a type of ivy, but the leaves were a bright blue color. "Here we are." Lady Aura gestured to the plant. "Try foraging this." "Will it do anything, my lady?" "That's part of the test." "Why is the coloration of this plant so glaring?" "Probably so people can differentiate it from all the other plants." "Was it something like having flowers or brightly colored fruit, except for a whole plant?" Ludmilla cautiously approached the vine, recalling the one that had bitten her back near the entrance of the adventurer training area. The vine didn't show any signs of moving, however, and she came away with a handful of snow-white berries. "Will this suffice?" Lady Aura and Lord Mayor frowned down at her outstretched palm. "Why just the berries?" Lord Mayor asked. "Why would I harvest the whole vine, my lord?" Ludmilla frowned. "Interesting." "What is?" "How people try to harvest this plant seems to depend on what they are," Lord Mayor said. "This one is hard enough to forage that people can't randomly get it right without high enough foraging skills. People without them usually try to pluck the leaves or pull the entire vine. When that happens, it counts as a failure and the plant attacks them. People with foraging skills that are too low can sense that the plant is dangerous, so they don't try unless we insist." "I see." Ludmilla emptied her palm into Lord Mayor's plate. "What are the berries for?" "I can sense that they're edible, but they're a third-tier alchemical reagent. If we go by production skill rules, it means you should have at least second-tier equivalent foraging skills to have a chance to forage them." A queasy feeling formed in the pit of Ludmilla's stomach. "But I'm supposed to be a captain," she said. "I mean, I've always been a ranger, but I was supposed to focus on my growth as a captain." Had her efforts to raise her new ranger corps inadvertently caused her to gain ranger levels? Since she was acting as an officer, she thought the experience would go toward her captain levels. In light of the new information, where was the line between ranger and captain? Was it even possible to be one or the other? Maybe she was just both at the same time and it was impossible to avoid build contamination. "I guess I'll die," Ludmilla sighed. "Huh?" Lady Aura blinked. "I think she means she wants to fix her build," Lord Mayor said. "Does she need to?" Lady Aura asked. "I thought she was supposed to be a ranger noble captain or whatever." "A revenant is pretty ranger-ish, too," Lord Mayor said. "So this is unavoidable?" Ludmilla asked. "Maybe," Lord Mayor said, "but it's not necessarily bad." "Yeah," Lady Aura said, "you guys get all sorts of crazy unfair stuff. Or they could just be prestige classes that combine bits and pieces from different archetypes," Lord Mayor offered. "Is there anything that rangers should have that you feel lacking in?" Ludmilla furrowed her brow in thought. She simply was what she was, or at least that's what she always thought. "Demi-humans stopped being terrified of me after I changed," Ludmilla said. Does that count? You lost your favored enemy bonuses? Lady Aura frowned. That kinda stinks. Have you noticed it working on any other types of targets? Not just unreasoning fear, but uncanny insights about certain species and whatnot. Not that I can recall, Ludmilla replied. My peers have always been wary of me because of what I am, but that has been the case since I was young. Well, you should have noticed something like a favored enemy bonus by now, Lady Aura said, so you must have some crazy ranger-ish prestige class without it. If you figure out what you're missing and what you have, Lord Mayor told her, I bet you could figure out the theme of your prestige classes and determine what each of them gives you. I see, that does make sense, but I never thought to use the theming concept to help identify my classes. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Having a solid idea of what classes she had would go a long way toward helping her shed the trepidation she felt over doing one thing or another. She was deathly afraid of doing something she shouldn't be and accidentally contaminating her build. I bet we can figure a lot of it out right now, Lady Aura grinned. Let's get to the next test.